we're going to be reading some scary stories about creepy experiences that police officers have had on the job. Hey y'all, I'm back, and today we are asking the question, cops of Reddit, what is the most paranormal thing you've witnessed on duty? Not a cop, but a story from my dad. An old man walks into an empty Circle K at night. The only other person there is the cashier. The man goes into the bathroom and stays in there for an extended period of time. The cashier goes to check on him and sees the door is locked and hears the water running inside the bathroom. He knocks, but the old man doesn't respond. The cashier gets the master key and unlocks the bathroom, fearing the old man got hurt, but opens the door to find no one in there. The old man's car is still parked out front of the store, and the cashier swears up and down that he was paying attention the whole time and he didn't leave the store. The cops are called, but they don't start investigating until the next morning. All the officers are interested in the case of the disappearing man. Turns out the man just accidentally locked the door behind him when he left the store. And yes, he did leave the store. The cashier was in the back smoking meth when it happened. The old man's car was still there because the battery died, so we called AAA and got picked up. It was a letdown for the officers. It was a letdown for me. The cashier's smoking meth in the back and thinking I was paying attention. I didn't see this man leave. Are you kidding? There's a fucking poltergeist in our jail that goes around punching people, destroying county property, and stealing shit. At least, that's what the inmates seem to be trying to tell us. But also, older officers claim to have seen shadows following officers around the zones or through the windows between the public and secure areas. And the amount of times I've heard a random door unlock, in the middle of the night in our max security wing is too damn high. Maybe the inmates aren't figuratively full of shit. They definitely are in the literal sense. The food's terrible and stops them up. Okay, what the hell is going on? Not a cop, but had a really interesting paranormal experience in boot camp. Boot camp is like jail to me. Each floor has 2 bays which house 50 people. Basically one huge ass room filled with 50 bunks. 2 people take 1 hour fire guard shifts. Basically just walking around the bay and cleaning. Now, towards the end of basic training is when we all told each other we had seen some shit, but everyone was too afraid to tell each other during the beginning of basic. 5 people in one night during week 2 in basic saw soldiers standing at attention on the kill zone. Big rectangle in the middle of the bay that we form up around during roll call, basically 5 feet from the foot of our bunks. One even rushed to the line only to see nobody there. People on fire guard saw a figure standing in the hallway to the bathroom on multiple occasions. I was on fire guard shift with my battle buddy, and he looked over me towards the bathroom hallways and freaked the fuck out. He saw a shadow of a man standing at parade rest. I've never seen somebody get that freaked out. The bathroom lights turn on with automated sensors. I would see shadows in the bathroom and go to inspect and nobody would be there. Showers at night would turn on even though everyone was in their bunks and accounted for. One time our door somehow opened, which sends a silent alarm to the drill sergeant in the office. Nobody was up besides the 2 fire guards. We got a good smoking on that one. People would feel somebody sitting on their bunks and look up and nobody would be there. One time we came back from a field exercise and we could see from outside that our bay lights were on, and even the drill sergeants were confused because the building doors were locked and secured and nobody had access to the building. Our building was built in the 1960s and we were told many suicides happened. A girl had literally killed herself a year before in the bay below us. That is horrific. I am already in basic training and potentially going to war, and now I have to deal with ghosts? Like, shut up. Alright, so the story goes, there's this one road that is haunted through and through. Thankfully, it's just outside of my city. Anyways, back in the day, like 50 or so years ago, I guess this woman was riding in a car with a male hitchhiker who directed her down this road. It's paved with several houses close to the main road it turns off. However, as you get further and further down, the trees get denser, the roads turn to dirt, and nothing is out there. Halfway along the road is a small wooden bridge with a creek or some water underneath. The hitchhiker made her pull over and either had another buddy waiting at the bridge or he had been hitchhiking too, depending on who tells the story. They got her out. Oh my god. I'm not gonna read this full thing. They killed her, and so many stories stem from that road. And if you Google the names, there's tons of websites with their own accounts of spookings. I've never been down that road, but I do partially believe in hauntings and ghosts. I'm on night shift and cruising around, and as I pass this road, all you can see is a thick layer of fog down the road, but it was like a wall of fog and never came out to the main street. I noped the fuck out of that area. Yeah, I also would not go there. Not exactly supernatural, but very creepy at first and ultimately really sad. I was on night shift in an isolated Northern Canadian First Nations community, investigating a possible late-night domestic violence complaint. It was the middle of winter and freezing, while my partner and I got out of our vehicle to try and find the residence where the neighbors heard a woman scream. Now, the houses on a lot of reservations are not well numbered, and our caller couldn't say for sure which house the scream came from, so we were wandering around like dummies when we heard an ear-splitting shriek come from the house directly in front of us. We hurried up to the door of the single-story prefab home, and I noticed all the lights were off. Nothing more could be heard from inside, but the door was ajar. We knocked and knocked on the door and yelled police through the opening in the door a few times. Nothing. So fearing for the safety of whoever just screamed, we slowly opened the door and announced ourselves again. Still nothing. Slowly we walked into the house, careful to step over the garbage and kids' toys that were all over the floor. The home was very poorly maintained. I was worried I might trip over a body buried in trash. The house was pitch black as the night outside, so we had our flashlights out. I panned my flashlight to the left, seeing just more nothing and more garbage. Then I panned it to the right, and the light reflected on something white. I snapped the light back and I fixed it on a small girl, maybe 10 years old, about 10 feet away. She was wearing a knee-length white sleeping gown, the type that went out of style with your great-grandmother. The gown was dirty and stained and likely ancient. The girl's head was slumped forward, but she was still standing, with the greasy hair covering her face. It was like the girl from the movie The Ring. I was expecting to see a static-filled TV behind her. I tried to talk to the girl, but she didn't move, didn't talk, just wobbled slightly in place. I tried to take a step towards her, and her head jerked up. She locked eyes with me, and she screamed her lungs out. Let's say it was startling and leave it at that. The girl then just hung her head low again, ignoring me. I'd like to say something cool and supernatural happened. It didn't. Eventually, we were man enough to approach her. She ran into a back bedroom where a boy half her age was sleeping. It took too much effort to wake the boy up, which was worrying. The boy was able to tell us his dad's name while the girl sat on the bed. Eventually, Dad came home once we were able to call him. He was working the night shift and had left his alcoholic wife with the kids. The wife had gone off drinking, and I suspect may have drugged the boy to make him fall asleep. There was no adult left to care for the siblings. The girl, it turns out, had severe autism and couldn't speak. She could only yell. We investigated, got local child welfare involved, and forwarded charges. Nothing happened. Everything was ignored. I'm in Canada after all. I wish it was the girl from the movie. I'd have finished my shift with a better opinion of the world than I did. I'm sorry, there were no real ghosts in this story. That is a million times scarier than ghosts. Oh my god, to do nothing? To do nothing. I know you said you're in Canada, but that's exactly how it is here too. Like, people just don't nobody cares. Nobody fucking cares. My uncle works for a dispatch in my town, and he recently told my family the weirdest call he's ever gotten. He says that he had received a call from a landline one night, and when he answered, it was only static on the other end. This happened 2 more times. Finally, he calls a squad to go check out the address from the caller ID. When the cops get there and walk into the house, they immediately saw there was a dead body. The person had been dead for 5 months. The craziest part about it is there was no electricity or any other utility working, so there's no way they should have been able to get those calls into dispatch. But if they hadn't, who knows how long that person's body would have stayed there. 5 months? 5 months and nobody checked on them? That makes me want to cry. Not my call, but my dad served for 25 years. Wasn't really a ghost story, but I think it's worth telling. One night he gets a call from a woman who says her neighbor had made a pact with the devil. The woman calling is about 35 and a religious wacko. The neighbor called about is about 75 at the time. My dad went over and knocked on the door, and the old lady answers, all happy, nice place decorated the same way for the past 50 years. She invites my dad in without even asking why he came, makes him some coffee, and asks how his day was. Naturally, at this point, my dad is wondering what the heck the call is about, but it became clear soon. At some point, my dad realizes he isn't the only person she's talking to, and that she thinks her apartment is full of people. Oh. My dad thanks her for the coffee, and she tells him to come back anytime. The whole time she was talking, he was writing down the names of the people she was talking to, and does some research on her when he gets back. Turns out she was talking to family members who were all dead. She had a daughter, 3 sons, a brother, and a husband, all dead. She had no family, no friends. She hasn't spoken to another person in years. Her groceries were delivered and she rarely left her apartment. Over the next 19 years, my dad took care of her. Oh my God. My sister and I came over all the time and just sat and talked with her. She even taught me how to cook. Over the years, she stabilized and stopped talking to her dead relatives. She just needed people. She actually lived till she was 94 and died in the guest room of my parents' house since it had become harder to take care of her from a distance as she got closer to the end. she was like a grandma for us. Oh my god, you guys. Her just needing people to talk to, like losing everyone. Can you even imagine losing everyone in your life? And like, while the neighbor being like, oh, she made a pact with the devil, okay, you're insane. But like, thank God she did call, even though the call was like, thank God she called, because she needed your dad. Oh my god. My uncle was the sheriff of a small town in New Mexico. He was the most hardcore person in our family. Super straight-laced, never really BS'd, and wasn't at all a joker. So when he told us this story, backed up by my aunt, we all believed it without question. A local reporter named Bob D would always show up at any major police activity from the police scanner. Big car wrecks, fires, anything worth maybe reporting in the local paper. Everybody on the force knew Bob D. He was around at least once or twice a week at various police activities. Bob was a bit of a joker himself. He would mess with people by flicking behind their ears. People would react to the flicks thinking it was a bug, only to turn around and see it was Bob. Everybody liked Bob, unfortunately. Bob had bad lung cancer and died pretty suddenly. His wife buried him, against his wishes. He wanted to be cremated. For the next couple of weeks after his funeral, people kept talking about seeing Bob at car wrecks, fires, all the same stuff he used to report on. There were 20 to 30 reports like this from civilians and members of the force, and my uncle didn't buy it. Until the night he and my aunt showed up at our house, gun drawn, pale as paper. We asked him what the hell happened, and he had to sit down, take a breath, compose himself, and start to outline what happened. Note, this is a guy that I never saw get rattled by anything. He said that him and my aunt were sitting on the couch in their house watching TV. My uncle kept scratching at his ear over and over. Finally, my aunt asked him what the problem was, and he turned around just in time to see their bedroom door open and Bob D standing in their doorway. Clear as day. My uncle jumped up, cussed or something, and got my aunt's attention, who turned around to see him there too. As soon as they both made eye contact with him, Bob smiled, turned, walked across the living room and out of their front door, closed the door behind him, and he was gone. My uncle got control of himself and ran outside, gun drawn, looking for Bob, but he was gone. At that point, they ran over to our place. We went over there and didn't see anything, but my aunt and uncle stayed at our place that night. At work the next day, all the guys on the force were giving my uncle lots of "we told you so's." People around town say they saw Bob D show up at police scenes for at least another 2 or 3 months. My dad saw him in our dark room in our basement with a friend. He was flicking their ears in the dark. During the 3rd month, people that saw him kept saying he was looking worse and worse. My uncle saw him 2 more times, each time confirming he was looking more and more worn. My dad had concluded that he was decomposing, and his ghost was reflecting that process. Every time my ear itches, I get goosebumps. Oh, Bob! Still being a little jokester in the afterlife. It's like weirdly sweet. Not me, but my dad was a cop for 32 years. This was one of his craziest calls. A call goes out for reported screaming. It's mid-January. Important later. My father and another officer respond to find a known deranged individual. Very long rap sheet and has been in and out of psychiatric care for years. Sitting on the front porch holding a double-sided wood-splitting axe. Steam is coming up off the grass and there are chunks lying all over the lawn. Upon interviewing the suspect, he admits that he and a friend were playing poker. The suspect was losing nearly every hand and came to the conclusion that his friend was a hient, Southern for ghost, and was cheating him. The suspect grabbed the axe, chased his friend outside, and hacked him into dozens of pieces, thus causing the warm blood to create steam from the grass. My dad tells the suspect that he needs to get in the police car because it's ghost-proof. He said the suspect dropped the axe and sprinted to get in the back seat while thanking them for helping him. Oh my god, are you kidding? Yeah, that is not what I was expecting at all. Reading that. Okay. One of the nice things about working in small towns is the unique problems that you learn to solve. One such problem belonged to a sweet little old lady who lived in a big old mansion over in the old section of town. She had a ghost infestation. Now, most of the time this was all right. I think she liked the company. But once in a while the ghost would get a wee bit rowdy. Thereupon she would call the SO and one of us would be dispatched to take care of the situation. We would show up, she would let us into the huge old house, the officer would go upstairs and read a stern warning to the ghosts. I found that if you took George C. Scott's speech from Patton, complete with pacing back and forth and gestures, and cleaned up the language a bit, the ghost would normally be impressed enough to keep quiet for a week or 2. Once you were done, you would go back downstairs, where the lady would stuff you full of homemade cinnamon rolls and iced tea, and you would swap gossip for a while. One day, the sheriff gets a bright idea. We would take care of the situation once and for all. Plans are made, people are notified, we wait for the call. And one Friday evening, she calls. Not only are the ghosts rowdy, it sounds like they're having a party. And, delivered in whispered tones, she thinks she heard some girl ghosts giggling up there, and this wasn't right. The call goes out and we load up our full-time officers, all 4 of them. We get our reserves, mostly security from a federal facility. We don our ninja gear, we mount our trusty steed, a reworked ambulance, and we sway and sputter and backfire and shudder and creak our way over the hill and through Dale. Once on location, a hasty whispered conference takes place. Who looks the least threatening? That would be yours truly having hysterics in the back. Up I go, I knock on the door, tell the little old lady that we're here to solve her problem, and have her sit on the porch swing with a blanket. Crash! 20 SWAT rhinos in full gear hit the door, clear the bottom floor tactically, flow the stairs, and then the shouting starts. Hey you! Yes you! Out, out, out! One here! Out, out, out! Clear! You! Yes you! Where do you think you're going? Out, out, out! Thus were our thoroughly scared subjects herded to the front lawn where the sheriff is standing on the roof of the ambulance. SWAT vehicle, delivering his patented fire and brimstone, straight path, crooked path speech, complete with finger-pointing, arm-waving, and emotional entreaties, to what only an absolute cynic would consider an empty lawn, watched with great interest by all the neighbors, heck, most of the town, who promptly got out the lawn chairs, sodas, and snacks and basically started a block party. Once we were all done and had allowed the thoroughly chastised and completely humbled spirits back upstairs, we sat her in the kitchen, eating cinnamon rolls and drinking iced tea. During this last part, the lady whispered to me that we had missed one. Never said I wasn't fast on my mental feet. I promptly whispered back that he was too young to be subjected to such a scary action. She examined him closely and declared that I was probably right. It took the ghosts almost 3 months to go back to their rowdy ways. I loved that. I loved that because she's just a little crazy old lady. And you know what? Honestly, that's entertaining as hell. And if you have nothing else to do, you know what? Why not round up the ghosts and yell at them? Give them a stern talking to. Worked as a police officer in a small town in rural Nebraska, back in the 90s. I was patrolling through town in winter. We had several abandoned houses in town, but one seemed to have the attraction of copper thieves, so we were told to keep an eye on it. Drove by it around 7 p.m. since it sat on a corner lot, and a clear view of all 4 sides of the house. As I drove around the corner, nothing looks out of the ordinary. About 2 hours later, I drive by again and the back door is wide open. I know the back door was not open when I drove by it earlier. Looking at the snow on the ground around the house, there were no footprints, so I think, what the hell? Call dispatch, tell them I'm investigating an open door at that address, and ask for a county sheriff to start my way. I walk to the open door, pull out my flashlight, and shine it inside. The house had obviously been gutted for the most part. The plaster walls had been torn down, debris piles everywhere. Since there were no footprints in the snow around the door other than mine, and with all the dust on the floor not showing any footprints, I chalk it up to the wind or maybe the door just opened on its own. I was about to secure the door when I heard a loud thump come from upstairs and what sounded like kids laughing. So I enter the house and yell out, "Police department, come downstairs." More of what sounds like kids playing. I tell dispatch that it sounds like there are kids in the house, and then start making my way through the kitchen into the living room where the stairs are, all the while cautiously checking the main floor. 2 more times I hear something upstairs, but since I've gotten no response, I start thinking maybe it's an animal. Still, I hear what I swear is kids laughing. The upstairs is relatively small, with a hallway at the top of the stairs that has 1 bedroom on the right, 1 straight ahead at the end of the hall, and a bedroom on the left. As I get to the top of the stairs, I hear a thump in the bedroom on the left. I carefully peek around the door and it's an empty room with a pile of plaster and wood debris in the middle. No kidding. Sitting on top of the pile of debris was a page torn out of a child's book with a picture of a police officer on it. The hair stood up on the back of my neck. I got out of that room, quickly cleared the other rooms upstairs and got to the fuck out of there. Told dispatch nobody was in the house, locked the back door, and never went back in there again. No, because I would burn the house down. Hearing the kids laughing anyways, like why would there be kids in an abandoned house? I would already be gone. Like you would not even catch me upstairs. I'm not a cop, but 3 years ago, our very elderly next door neighbor died suddenly in her house. They found her body 5 days later in the kitchen. Fast forward to last summer. I'm sitting in my house watching a movie and all of a sudden, about 8 police cars come out of nowhere. Sirens blaring, lights on, and most park in the empty house. Some park in my driveway, so I went outside to see what was up. A police officer went through the quick formalities and asked if I had seen anything strange in the last 5 minutes. I replied no and rather hesitantly asked what was going on. He said the police department received a call from that house, and when the operator picked up, the line went dead. I stayed at a friend's house that night. Why is old neighbor calling the police? Called to a residence out in the boonies. This was in Wyoming, so the boonies are really the boonies. at about 11 p.m. about suspicious activity. When we get there, we are told by the family living there that there are very strange screams coming from a creek area about 1,000 feet away. And sure enough, waiting outside on the porch with them for about a minute, I hear it. It's very hard to describe what it sounded like. It was like a woman in very severe distress, but higher pitched, and each scream lasted about 10 to 15 seconds. It never sounded like it was saying anything, it just sounded like a cry of sheer terror, and it repeated again. We tell the family we're going to investigate. We just walked down to the creek since it was nice out. We hear about 2 more screams, getting louder as we approach the creek. By now, we're both kind of freaked out. There are 2 possibilities. Someone is getting murdered in the creek, or it's a wild animal. As we approach the creek, we hear no screams for about 5 minutes. We search around and we find nothing, yelling at the top of our lungs for somebody to come towards if they are there. Then we hear the exact same scream behind us, exactly from where we came from. We get about halfway back to the house and the scream comes so loudly it seems to be right next to us. We frantically shine our flashlights everywhere and find nothing. No eye glints of animals, no rustling bushes, just silence. We trace our steps back and the scream comes from around the creek again. This time it lasted about 30 seconds and was much louder than before. Our retreat becomes a little more hasty. By this time we were both scared shitless and verified with the family to call us if they heard it again. They never called again, and we got the hell out of there. I still don't know what it was. As an avid outdoorsman, I know no animal makes a cry like that, especially one that can move stealthily without being spotted by flashlights. Something else that weirded me out was that it was completely silent when the screams were happening. During summer in Wyoming, there's always some sort of animal sound. Frogs croaking, crickets chirping, owls hooting, coyotes howling, etc. But there was nothing. Until we were leaving and the scream had stopped. Then a frog started croaking, and it gives me the creeps just thinking about it still. That's all I'm gonna read for now. I hope you guys enjoyed. If any of you happen to be cops, or if you guys just have any crazy paranormal experiences that you want to share with me and the community, I will have my subreddit linked down below. Being a cop and having to deal with all these scary things, and then having to deal with ghosts on top of that, I would never in my life want to be a cop. Sorry. But other than that, I'm gonna go. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.